Call to order the Rosstown Council. After we had a closed session, we have nothing to report out of that closed session. First item is open time for public expression, and this is for items that are not on the agenda. So if you're waiting to speak on an item on the agenda, please wait until that time. But if you want to speak about something we do not have on the agenda tonight, you can take 3 minutes and then please come to the front and state your name, if you would.
Before we start with that, I don't see it on the agenda, but we should probably take a roll call.
Me? Do I just call their names? Okay. Councilmember McMillan? Here. Councilmember Robbins?
Here.
Mayor Breckus?
Here.
Councilmember Cool?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher is absent.
Okay. So we're going to open time for public expression. Is there anybody that would like to be heard on an item not on the agenda? Is there anybody on Zoom?
There are no raised hands, Mayor.
Okay. Next up is recognition for a 20-year anniversary for Officer Paul Stromowski. Chief Pata.
Mayor and members of the council and members of the public, thanks for having me here today. So Officer Stromowski's been here for 20 years, but there's a lot of stuff about him that I'd like to share with you. Paul's originally from Los Angeles. 2 weeks after high school, he joined the Army, where he was deployed to Germany, where he lived for a number of years. And after living there for about 4 or 5 years, he was discharged, came back to California, went to UC Davis, where he got his degree in foreign language and linguistics. After college, he still does this a lot. He's really into wine. So if you have any questions about wine, Paul's your guy. He worked in the international wine industry for a short time before becoming a California State Park Ranger. Paul's married to his wife, Anna, and when her job transferred her to the Bay Area, Paul came with her, which was probably a good idea. He transferred his career here to the town of Ross in 2003, where he became a police officer for the town. Paul is our go-to guy when it comes to evidence, processing reports. He's also a field training officer and has trained a number of police officers in this town over the last 20 years. Paul, as I mentioned, is married to Anna. He's the father of an 11-year-old and an 11-year-old boy and 9-year-old twins, boy and girl. So I've only been here for a couple of years, but Paul has been super helpful and instrumental in doing so many things for our police department. And so it's important and right that we acknowledge him after his 20 successful years here at the town of Ross. And I think you have something for him.
I do. Yes, I want to say thank you so much for serving the town for 20 years. In recognition of your service, we have a plaque for you, appreciating your service.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
It's back to school night, so Paul's family couldn't be here, but they're probably watching on TV, so. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
The next item on our agenda is the mayor's report. I am sure that you have read about the terrible fire tragedy on Maui and thought about how well our community is prepared for a fire and for evacuation. It is super important that every resident is signed up for Alert Marin to receive notifications in emergencies. While the town of Ross has an emergency siren, its main purpose is to alert residents of potential flooding, and the siren cannot be heard throughout the entire town. To receive emergency notifications, please sign up for these free services: Alert Marin, Marin County Office of Emergency Management, and register at website, you'll see it on the morning after, and to Nixle, register by texting your zip code to 888-777. Registering with Alert Marin and Nixle will ensure that emergency response and evacuation information is sent directly to your cell phone and is tailored to the type of emergency underway. Please also consider getting involved in fire readiness organizations, including FireWise or becoming a neighborhood block captain. Please go to Fire Safe Marin at firesafemarin.org if you want more information about joining an existing FireWise neighborhood group. Ross has 2 FireWise groups, one on Woodhaven and the other in Winship Park, or starting a new one in your own neighborhood. Information about hardening your home, defensible space, and vegetation management to prepare for wildfires and other valuable information is also available at firesafemarin.org and at the Marin County Wildfire Prevention Authority at marinwildfire.org. For those of you who do not have the Ross School calendar handy, the start of school was Tuesday, August 22nd. Ross Back to School Night will be held on September 7th. The Ross School PTO is holding a mixer for Ross School parents only that evening on the Ross Common. If you're feeling left out of that event, don't worry, the town dinner is set for September 22nd, 2023, and everyone in town is invited. In an effort to be as inclusive as possible, we will host a community table that is open to residents who wish to sit with other members of the community and meet each other. This, of course, is the whole point of the town dinner, and we hope that many people will take advantage of this. Council members will be sitting at this community table in an effort to meet as many people in the community as possible. We hope to see all of you there at this town tradition. I'm sure many of you have been observing the work on Laurel Grove, which consists of sidewalk installation on the east side of the street. Some people have asked me why the sidewalk does not continue all the way down Laurel Grove. The short answer is it had to do with the expense and also the ability of the street as built to accommodate a sidewalk. It doesn't mean that a sidewalk will not happen in the future, but it will take some additional funding and engineering strategies. Other events going on around town include the Ross Historical Society Luncheon event, at which I will be speaking on September 7, 2023 at Magic. In keeping with the subject matter of the group, I will try and weave in some discussion about council members' duties past and present. And for that, I will be tapping my father, Peter Breckus, who served as mayor for 16 years, to review town council duties from years past. As always, if you have questions or concerns about the town, please let me know. The next item on the agenda is item 8, council committee and liaison reports. Are there any reports? Julie?
Yes, our MC Climate Action Committee met in July, and the speaker was Tamara Peters, who runs Resilient Neighborhoods. And I would encourage each of you to sign up for the Resilient Neighborhoods class, which starts in September. It's all online. There's usually an ad in the morning after about the class. And I did it in 2020, and it really reduces your carbon footprint. The other thing I wanted to report on was about the Winship Park Firewise neighborhood, which is merging with the Barber Tract Firewise neighborhood. And we are going from about 140 homes to about 280 homes. We will be having an event at Marin Art and Garden on September 20th, 5:30 to 7 p.m. Todd Lando, who is the battalion chief for Central Marin Fire, will be speaking about defensible space, hardening your home, vegetation management, evacuation, emergency preparedness. Rich Shortall, who heads Fire Safe Marin, will also be there to speak about some of the projects that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is conducting.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a report? Yes?
So there's a subcommittee of the Fire Board that continues to meet to discuss how to use reserves in the district's budget, and we are continuing to meet.
Okay. Next, staff and community reports. Our town manager, Johnson, do you have a report?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I have a couple of updates. The Laurel Grove Safe Pathways Phase 2A project is nearly complete, and the new sidewalk and path are open to pedestrian traffic when there are no construction or traffic control activities that are taking place. The town engineer has noticed that the narrower 10-foot wide lanes appear to be slowing down vehicles as intended. Final striping on Laurel Grove and colorized asphalt stamping work will be completed by mid-September. So I hope you've all been able to see. There's been lots of folks, including kids going to school, using it. So it's really a nice amenity safety measure in town. We're really looking forward to our POAs live on the Common concert tomorrow evening, starting at 4:30 p.m. They have been planning to hold another Live on the Common event in October, and we just learned that they have changed the date of that from October 8th is when it was originally planned, and they're now planning to hold it on Saturday, October 14th, from 2:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., so earlier in the day. And I'm sure we'll be getting, they always have those really cool flyers out, so we'll get more information. The mayor alluded to this in her report, but on September 7th, the Ross Historical Society, starting at 11 a.m., is holding a luncheon at Magic in the Livermore Pavilion. This luncheon is open to the public. Please register by September 1st by going to www.moya-rhs.org. Our own Mayor Breckus will be the star speaker and will describe how the duties of the mayor and the council members has changed over time in Ross. And I'll follow the mayor with some information about the town's recent accomplishments, major projects, and initiatives in the coming year. So I'm looking forward to that. On September 13th, the town and Age Friendly Ross is hosting their breakfast gathering at Cedars, starting at 9:30 a.m. Please RSVP by September 15th to Ross Rec. I know that our town clerk did send out a e-blast to Ross residents that have signed up for our e-blasts about these fun events. The topic of this September 13th breakfast is disaster preparedness. And on that note, staff has worked with council members McMillan and Kircher and staff from partnering agencies, including Miranda Miller from Ross Valley Fire Department, to participate in, sponsor, promote various opportunities for our residents to receive education programming, either via presentations such as the one that Councilmember McMillan mentioned that will take place at Magic on September 20th, or via handouts, information like that, referrals to various websites. There's a plethora of information that's available to our residents to help them prepare for disasters. So we have the September 20th event that Councilmember McMillan mentioned. And for that, if you could please RSVP to barberwinship@gmail.com in advance. And that's what I have for you this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there a report from the Ross Property Owners Association? you want to see if is there someone online maybe?
It looks like there is, hold on. Marcia Skall?
Hi, it's Marcia Skall. Good evening, everyone. Mayor and town council members. I'm going to sound a lot like a repeat of what the town manager just said. But these are the activities that the Ross Property Owners Association has been involved with. There are two events that we either are sponsoring or are partnering with, and that is the Age Friendly Task Force, and that is the breakfast on September 13th. We're preparing and responding to wildfires and other disasters. That will be hosted at Cedars as a free event, and all age friendlies are welcome. We are also involved with the Live on the Common, which is the Ross auxiliary portion of the Ross Property Owners Association. It's going to feature the band The Love Handles, which is an 11-piece high energy party band. And it's going to play hits from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And the intent is to have this event appeal to all ages. There'll be a food truck, there'll be arts and crafts for the young ones, there'll be tables and chairs for the age-friendly crowd. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, again from 4:30 to 8:30. Membership update. We are still actively advertising for new members for 2023. We do have a rolling admission ever since we initiated the membership drive through the website. Interestingly, we have a large portion that actually joins in fourth quarter. We're at about 70% of membership thus far. And about 60% of our membership does actually renew annually through our website, which is great news because it means it is an auto renewal and it makes our job of doing the membership drive easier each year. The upcoming projects we have for Q4, we received approval from the post mistress for a second walnut table for the post office, which if you've seen the first one, it's quite beautiful. Krista already mentioned that the save the date for the next upcoming Live on the Common is October 14th. Kelly Flightus, who's been working with the RPOA, has revitalized the Leadership Council. There'll be approximately 3 meetings a year, and she's been doing a great job getting that kicked off again. And upcoming, we have Winterfest and the Holiday Lights, which we will be working on. And that's my report for now.
Thank you, Marcia. The next item is the consent agenda. And we normally take all of these items together and vote on them together. So if anybody would like to take an item off on the council? Okay, is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on one of the consent agendas? Otherwise, we'll take a vote. Seeing none.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a tie vote for second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 4, motion passes.
Okay. Item 11 is a no item, so I guess we don't have anything there. So we'll move on to 12. That's town council. Did you want me to stop? Or I can keep going? Sure.
Okay, Mayor and Council, thank you very much. Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. Tonight we have a Presentation by Marin Municipal Water District regarding their upcoming Pine Mountain Tunnel Tanks project that includes hauling excavation materials through Ross beginning September 5th and through October 3rd. Tonight we have some staff members from MMWD to provide a short presentation. And so with a lot of information there in the staff report that I'm sure you have reviewed. So we'll go right to introducing Ranjiv Kush, from the district manager, local district manager from MMWD, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Rich. I'm actually on the board of directors for MMWD, representing District 3, which includes the Ross Valley. Mayor Breckus, council members, thanks so much for this opportunity to meet with all of you on a beautiful Ross Valley evening. I'm really glad for the discussion that we're going to have, because it involves a project that's very important for all of us, both with respect to our water security as well as our abilities to respond to wildfires. Specifically, we're dealing with replacement of old infrastructure that supplies our water, the Pine Mountain Tunnel, which was constructed in conjunction with Alpine Dam over 100 years ago in 1919. Originally, the Pine Mountain Tunnel was used to move water from Alpine Lake down into Fairfax, and then from there further along to San Rafael. It's impressive to think about the amount of infrastructure that was built by a very small population in Marin at that time to ensure a water supply for what was hoped to be a growing and thriving community. Now, of course, that was over 100 years ago, and about in 1971, the tunnel, which I should say is the largest tunnel in Marin, it's about 1.5 miles, was decommissioned or for the purposes of transporting water and converted into a storage facility for water, for treated water. And it's been used for storing water since then. However, as that infrastructure ages, it becomes prone to leaks, increased water contamination, and it's been a priority for the district to replace that with more modern storage infrastructure for some time now. With the new rate structure that we approved recently, as well as the new budget, we now have the resources to move forward with this infrastructure replacement project. Crystal Yesman, who is the chief engineer for the district, will be providing all the technical details of this project. However, it's important to note that this work will include removal of dirt from the site of storage tanks that will replace the tunnel. And our best option for managing this dirt is to transport it through the watershed and out through the town of Ross, which is quite an endeavor, which Crystal will be describing in more detail. And so it was important to discuss this with all of you, and also acknowledge all of the support that we've had from Director of Public Works and the city manager for addressing the issues that are related to movement of dirt through the town of Ross, including, of course, ensuring any impacts on the roads, impacts on traffic, impacts on access to the watershed through Natalie Green Park, and impacts on school drop-offs and pickups. So all of this has been now discussed and coordinated with staff. Again, we're really appreciative of all the support we've had in developing this project. I'll close by noting that the new infrastructure that will be replacing the Pine Mountain Tunnel will not only increase our overall storage capacity of water for the Ross Valley and allow us to withstand emergencies more readily, but also provide more water for managing responses to wildfire. So ultimately, this is, I think, a small inconvenience for important benefits that we're going to be realizing far into the future. So with that, I'll hand it over to Crystal, and then of course, both of us are happy to discuss any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Breckus. Crystal Yesman, Chief Engineer with Marin Municipal Water District. A lot of what Ranjiv says is in the presentation that you'll see in a moment, so I'll try to get through it without repeating too much, but maybe picking out some of the salient details that are important to the project. So really quickly, just a few slides. We'll go over the project background and need, the planned construction activity, the temporary traffic impacts to the watershed, roads and trails in the town of Ross, and then next steps. Now, this photo to the right shows the construction of the Pine Mountain Tunnel in 1919, and pictured in that photo is Michael O'Shaughnessy, who was around during the construction of Alpine Dam, which was built prior to the O'Shaughnessy Dam and the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. So I often refer to Alpine Dam as the mini-me for the O'Shaughnessy Dam. But also pictured to the left is the engineer of record at the time, Alan Baker. And the man in the middle is unidentified, but interesting photo from quite some time ago. So next slide, please. So as Ranjiv mentioned, the tunnel was built in 1919. It's an 8-foot diameter tunnel that runs through Pine Mountain from Cascade Canyon to Kent Pump Road, which is, the outlet is very near the Kent Lake, the upstream side of Kent Lake. It's about 9,000 feet long. It was designed originally to bring unfiltered water from Alpine Lake into the community for drinking. And at the time, they added some chlorine and some, they would settle the water with some alum, but it was unfiltered. So in the 1960s, regulations got more strict, and we had to construct a couple of treatment plants to filter the water, namely the San Geronimo Water Treatment Plant in Woodacre and the Bontempi Water Treatment up in the watershed. And so the tunnel was decommissioned and capped on one side, the upstream side at Kent Lake. And we started to use it as a storage tank, a very long, skinny storage tank. And so the water is pushed up into the tunnel and brought back in and out. So we did some inspections in 93 and 2009 internally, and there are cracks, and there was groundwater infiltrating in, which you can imagine when the tunnel's full, that water's pushing out. So the tunnel does leak, and it's seismically vulnerable to earthquakes. So we started working to design and plan for replacement of the tunnel with modern tanks, and in support, the regulatory agencies have been supporting that effort. Next slide, please. In 1919, we did a risk assessment of our assets, and especially focused on Ross Valley storage. And this is a heat map you might have seen before. On one axis, we have the probability of failure. On the other axis is the consequence of failure. So if you get into the red, that's a higher priority, higher risk project. And the circle is the circle for Pine Mountain Tunnel. You'll also note there's a Ross Reservoir is up in the red at that point too, but we recently completed a project to stabilize Ross Reservoir. There was a landslide near the reservoir, but it's still quite old, and that one is going to have to be replaced at some point in the future as well. So the benefits of the project to the community, it's eliminating the water loss, it's increasing our water supply to Ross Valley, and it's getting rid of that seismic risk and improving reliability. And we'll be increasing our storage capacity from 3 million gallons, which is the tunnel's current capacity, to two tanks that will hold 4 million gallons in total. So an extra 1 million gallons of water. Next slide, please. This is our phase 1 project, which started on August 1st. And the tank site for the new tanks is just below Sky Elks Road, on Concrete Pipe Road. And so we're currently excavating the hillside in order to make room for the tank construction. So that's considered phase 1. And because of the owl nesting season, our construction window is really short. We only have about 3 months to work, and then we have to wait till the next year. So we estimate that phase 1, just preparing the site, is going to take 2 seasons. And to do so, we need to remove 45,000 cubic yards of dirt. And most of that dirt will stay on the watershed. We'll be moving it up to Bullfrog Quarry. But the topsoil, we are going to be off-hauling to a landfill, and that's about 5,000 cubic yards. So take construction. After we excavate the site, we'll be building a big soil nail wall. It's about 400 feet long and 70 feet tall. So you'll see construction of that wall over the next 2 seasons. Phase 2, which will go out to bid shortly, will be the construction of the tanks. And we expect that the construction of the 2 tanks will take about 3 seasons to finish. Next slide, please. So the off-haul route. So hauling activity is going to be one way. It's taking the dirt off. And so the trucks will return up Bolinas Fairfax Road, which is currently down to 1 lane because of a landslide. So the route that we've chosen for off-hauling will take us through the watershed and out Natalie Coffin Green. That's the red line there that's being shown with the pointer. We expect it'll take about 4 weeks to take that topsoil off-site, and we'll be finished with the work. And we've been collaborating closely with the town Public Works Director in terms of windows when the trucks can move, making sure we're not running trucks during school drop-off and pickup, having flaggers at Natalie Coffin Green. There's lots of signage that's been placed out on the watershed. We've been coordinating with MCBC, making sure the word is out in terms of which fire roads will be closed to pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And so with that, again, it's a one-way direction of trucks. Now, we did have another project to stabilize the Ross Reservoir just a few years ago in 2021. And that project, actually, we brought in 30,000 cubic yards of dirt to Ross Reservoir. And this time, we're bringing out 5,000 cubic yards. So a bit smaller of an impact to that project, which was just a few years ago. So hopefully, we can mitigate any impacts. So next slide, please. So some of the ways that we're doing that is that all trucks will be inspected, cleaned, and tarped before leaving the job site to ensure that the external surfaces are free from soil and debris. There's no hauling windows for school drop-off and pickup. And the contractor will have flaggers, and they also are restricted. They can not run any trucks after 5 p.m. And there's a few more other details that we've worked out with the town, which is in the packet. There's details in the staff report. So next slide, please. So next steps, we're completing public outreach. We've sent out letters to the members of the community along the haul route. We have signage. We've spoken with the superintendent of schools and town of Ross staff. We just finished up actually preparing the watershed fire roads for the truck traffic. We needed to do some vegetation management along the roadsides and smooth out some of the bumps on those dirt roads, but we're ready to go. And starting September 5th, we'll start anticipating bringing the soil down off the hill. So it'll take about 3 to 4 weeks. So with that, any questions?
I have a question. When you said Ross Reservoir, you mean Phoenix Lake, right?
No, when I say Ross Reservoir, there's a concrete square structure that goes, if you go up Warren Springs Road. So Phoenix Lake, you pass the ranger residence, you almost get to the log cabin, you take a right, and you go up that hill. There's a enclosed covered storage facility known as Ross Reservoir. It's treated water, and it has a roof on it. It's square.
Yep,
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. I just wasn't sure which. And then the dirt, one of the pieces of information seemed important was that dirt is suspected to have sudden oak, what would you call it?
Phytophthora.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And so that's the reason why you're taking it off site.
Right, yeah, we
and
don't want to
tarping.
move it because our research has shown that it's, soil-borne pathogen, and it's the deposition of soil, the actual, that then gets rained upon. It seeps into the ground and gets uptaken by the root system of trees. So we've been working with a Phytophthora consultant, specialty consultant, to come up with best management practices to ensure that there's no contamination from the soil that we're taking. And as I mentioned previously, the trucks will be tarped and cleaned and inspected before they're allowed to leave the job site.
And so it wasn't possible to treat it. Is that correct?
No, yeah, we looked into that. It would take hundreds of thousands of gallons of bleach. We found that the infection of Phytophthora in the watershed was actually was begun through nursery stock that's contaminated. So when folks buy plants from nurseries and plant it in their yards, we find that the contamination starts to spread from private homeowners into the watershed is where we find most of it. And so we've been, this is very important to us, especially for the fact that when the trees do die from Phytophthora, it causes a fuel load issue for fire concerns. So we do a lot of work in the watershed to remove diseased trees and to reduce the fuels throughout the watershed.
And then has there been coordination of how many people will be parking up around Phoenix Lake? Will there be coordination with the town in terms of, I imagine maybe some of the flaggers or some of the people might need to park. Will there be coordination on that?
Yes, a couple of spots will be taken up to make room for the trucks, but there'll still be parking there. And we envision that there'll be 2 waves of trucks per day, except for Wednesdays when there's early release. So there'll be a wave that comes through around 9 a.m. of trucks in the morning, and then another wave in the afternoon before school pickup and the regular drop-off days. But because they have to drive all the way to the East Bay and get back. So we're thinking, 10 trucks for each wave, approximate. But the flaggers will be there to allow automobile traffic to get up Dibble Road when there's no trucks coming down. So they'll have walkie-talkies and they'll be able to flag people through. But we certainly want to avoid there being a queue. I know there's often a queue at Natalie Coffin Green, so the flaggers will help control the queue as well, so to avoid impacts.
And I know when you've done work up there before, you've actually had your workers park up above near the bathrooms. Is that the plan, or will they be taking spots in the parking lot?
Oh, we can make sure they park up above. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to take up spots with unnecessary construction vehicles.
Those are my questions. Did you have a question?
Where are the flaggers going to be?
We'll have a flagger at Glenwood and Lagunitas Road right before the entrance, and then another one in the parking lot as well. And they're also going to have a flagger up near Five Corners, because there's actually a spot where we're going to allow pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the closed fire road. So we'll have somebody up there, and we do plan on having an increased ranger presence during the off hauls. Yeah.
Did you have a question, Julie?
The soil that you're removing, it's going to be dry soil, right? It's not going to be wet. I'm just wondering how well are the tarps going to do covering the soil? I kind of have this picture of this trucks driving down Lagunitas, kicking off a lot of soil and sudden oak death. That's just in my mind.
Right. Well, our specialty consultant on Phytophthora has stated that the aerosolization of the Phytophthora is not really the biggest concern for contamination and spread. It's when you have, say, soil that gets deposited on the roadway. So it's really important to us to make sure that there's no soil being knocked off or, being brought down. And so we do believe that the tarping will, certainly mitigate the risk, but we do have water tanks already stationed up at the construction site, and if there's a dust issue that we start to see, we can have the contractor, hose it down before it's allowed to leave the site.
For the first couple truckloads, I'm wondering if maybe somebody can follow the truck just to make sure that there's not, soil being kicked off through the community.
That's a
Would
good
that be
idea.
possible?
Yeah, I can have our inspectors make sure of that. And then after the project's done, we'll be convening and meeting with the Public Works Director to look at impacts to the road. If there is any soil or sediment, we'll do whatever is needed, whether it's street sweeper or, any other repairs necessary.
Yes.
So that was what I was going to ask about, is there a plan to wash down the streets afterwards if they're dusty?
Right, yeah, if that's necessary,
It could be water.
we certainly
And
will,
then
yeah.
in the staff report, it mentioned that the condition of Lagunitas Road and Dibley Road were evaluated. What about the condition of the parking lot at Natalie Coffin Green Park and the bridge there that goes up to the fire road? Has that been documented to keep, so that we can make sure that that is repaired if damaged?
Right, so Water District owns the bridge and a big portion of the parking lot there, but we'll certainly we've videotaped it, we've taken photos of everything. And prior to the Ross Reservoir slide repair, we actually put additional beams across that bridge in preparation for when we moved the soil back in 2021. So we're pretty confident the bridge load can withstand the loading of the trucks, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Why don't we open up for members of the public? Does anybody have, want to be heard on this item or has a question?
No raised hands online.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your presentation and giving us the information and opportunity to work with you.
Thank you, some good suggestions. I'll bring them back. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is item number 13, Ross Council to provide staff direction regarding the implementation of a pilot Ross Recreation Fee Assistance Program. Consider acceptance of a $31,000 donation from the Coates family for the purpose of initiating funding for the pilot program and appropriate $31,000 as both revenue and expense in the recreation budget account.
Bear with me for
Emery?
1 second as
Sure.
I get this up.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Mayor Breckus and members of Town Council for having me here tonight. I am here to ask the Town Council to provide direction to staff regarding the implementation of the Pilot Ross Recreation Fee Assistance Program, to consider acceptance of the $31,000 donation from the Coates family for the purpose of initiating funding for this pilot program, and to appropriate $31,000 as both revenue and expenses in the Recreation Department budget account. Through the Pilot Fee Assistance Program, Ross Recreation looks to increase access to quality childcare and recreation programs, to increase distribution of funds in an equitable way through the use of a fee assistance application, to increase support of Ross School District and Kentfield School District staff and the Ross Recreation community, and increase funding. We have an offer of program funding through the Coates family of $31,000 to implement and seed the pilot program. Ross Recreation currently offers 2 program discount options. We offer a 20% off teacher discount for Ross School District employees. That could be anybody that works for the Ross School District. We also offer a multiple day discount for Kids Club after school. So we offer 10% off if you are enrolled in 4 or 5 days of the program, and 5% off if you enroll for 3 days of the Kids Club program. And this is per season. The purpose of offering this is to financially assist RSD teachers and employees with quality childcare options, which in turn helps Ross School retain and recruit staff. Oops. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Okay. Staff is proposing the following: to fund the Pilot Fee Assistance Program through donors, such as the Coates family and future donors, to distribute and track funds through the Recreation Department budget, to extend teacher discounts to the Kentfield School District employees. We also offer programs over at Basage, so this would help those teachers as well, and to continue to offer multiple day discounts for the Kids Club after school program. If Town Council wishes to establish the pilot program, staff recommend that applicants be asked to complete an equitable, community-driven, and convenient fee assistance application form. The application is designed to be first come, first served, and confidential to the extent allowed by our town attorney. It's designed to be in support of the Ross recreation community, including teachers and anyone who may need financial assistance. This will also be managed in-house by Ross Recreation staff, which will be using a modest amount of staff time to establish, administer, and evaluate the pilot program. Fund distribution will be determined by eligibility, area of residence, and availability of funds. To be eligible, staff recommended that applicants be either Ross School District or Kentfield School District employees and or persons already qualified by state or federal government's public assistance programs, such as CalWORKs, Medi-Cal, subsidized public housing, or if they participate in either of the school district's free and reduced lunch programs. Financial assistance will be distributed based on residency percentages. Out of the approximate 1,300 current active participants in Ross recreation programs, 41% reside in Ross, 26% reside in Kentfield, 15% in Greenbrae, and 18% are non-residents, meaning they are outside of those communities. So since Ross, Greenbrae, and Kentfield participants make up 82% of our total registrations, we would look to award a majority 60% portion of the program funds to those who reside in those zip codes. The remaining 40% would be dedicated to non-residents, and that is to allow for our school district employees who most likely may or may not reside outside of those communities, so they would be non-residents. Funds for the pilot program will be dispersed on a first-come, first-served basis, as mentioned, and will be rolling throughout the year, meaning applicants may apply at any time during the year. The fee assistance will be granted if funds are available and if the applicant has met the application standards. Applicants may receive up to 75% off each after-school program with a maximum of $3,000 per family per year if funds are available. And that was based on our most expensive program. So that would be 75% off of a kids club program fee. So that's how we got to that figure. Recipients may use funds all at once, or it can be spread out throughout the year and must be used towards after-school programs and not for supplies, materials, special event fees, rental fees, or other costs if they apply. Lastly, funds are not transferable, but may be shared among family members, and any unused funds within 1 year would roll back into the fund. If Town Council decides to move forward with the pilot program and accept the Coates family $31,000 donation for the purpose of initiating the program, staff would work with the town attorney to draft a donation agreement that both staff and town attorney would sign. This would also be true for any other future donations if they were to be offered. Lastly, staff would report back to council during the budget process to review the status of the program and how much of the fund has been expended. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I'm just wondering, because it's a very generous offer and program, and I commend the Coates family as well as you for coming up with it. I'm just wondering, because the Coates family has a project pending in the town, if there's any potential conflict by them making this donation prior to the final inspection of their project being given by the town.
Maybe we should defer that to Ben. Did you?
That's a good idea.
Did you want to take that question?
Sure. There's no legal conflict for the donation, but as the staff just recommended, I would draft a donation agreement to make it clear that the city, this is a donation, and the city's not waiving any and all powers under our police power.
I also want to just echo what a generous donation it is and how nice it is to think of this particular need. And I think it could be great for our aftercare program and helping out the school get teachers. So I think it's really a win-win. If there's no other questions, I'll open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Seeing none, we'll
There are no raised hands online.
bring it back to the council, and I think it's just staff direction, so.
I think it's a wonderful program. I mean, I worry a little if we only have $31,000. I mean, I know that's to start, and it can be $3,000 per family. We're only helping 10 people, but I think we get started, see how it goes, and see how much we have in donations and how we can spread it around the best we can. But I think it's a wonderful way to make our programs, and especially Kids Club, more accessible to people. So thank you so much for doing all of the background work to set up how it might work.
Absolutely.
Do you plan to publicize that this is going on once it gets started to try and encourage more donations?
Yeah, so if this were to be approved, we would want to publicize this, especially to the teachers of both Ross School District and Kentfield School District, as well as to our public. That would be to be determined. I haven't come up with the marketing plan for this yet. However, yes, that would be the goal, is to let people know that this exists.
Great.
And I was hoping that you would also publicize it to potential donors in town.
Absolutely.
To build upon the funds.
Good call out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we can move on to item 14, which is town council to provide direction to staff regarding the concept of a pilot Ross History Walk project submitted by the Ross Property Owners Association and Ross Historical Society. Maureen, that's yours as well.
That is myself as well. Give me 1 second.
No, it's just staff direction.
Excuse me, Mayor Breckus, I just want to double check with our town attorney. On the last item, we don't need anything else for because there are a couple of other, there's appropriate and there's also the acceptance.
Well, it's on the agenda for direction. So I think direction's fine. As long as we have a unanimous direction, all four of you agree with this process. I mean, if you want to take a motion to approve, you could do that too.
I think I'd like it. I mean, it was actually to provide staff direction regarding the implementation of it, because we wanted to make sure the council was on board with some of the guidelines that Maureen went through. And then the second part was to really accept the donation, and you could accept the donation contingent upon the execution of a donation agreement. You could add that to your motion. And then to actually appropriate the $31,000 as both revenue and expense in the recreation budget.
Okay, so as a budget amendment, maybe we'll take a motion. Does anybody want to say so moved?
So moved.
Councilmember McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Away. With a vote of 4, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ready with item 14?
I am. So once again, thank you, Mayor Breckus and members of Town Council. On behalf of the Ross Property Owners Association and Ross Historical Society, I'm here to present on the consideration and direction for the Pilot Ross History Walk project. Staff is looking for Town Council to provide directions regarding the proposed concept. Adrian Liggett from Ross Property Owners Association and Richard Turney from Ross Historical Society are present on Zoom this evening, or I hope they are. So please direct any questions that you may have over to them. This presentation will cover the goals of the project, who the project stakeholders are, the proposed sites, content and design, materials, methods and maintenance, project costs, and the next steps. RPOA presented the pilot Ross History Walk project to staff as a way for residents to access Ross's history via an age-friendly and accessible trail. In conjunction with the Ross Historical Society, RPOA proposed creating and placing historical storyboards along the Ross Common pedestrian pathway. The project aims to encourage residents of all ages to walk the path and rediscover or discover the Ross's rich history. The project is being presented as a way to promote physical activity, encourage early literacy, foster family time together and connections to nature, further complement the downtown tree and landscape plan, and create a bridge for community collaboration. Staff met with project stakeholders from RPOA, RHS, and Town of Ross Department of Public Works to tour prospective historical storyboard sites along Ross Commons pedestrian pathway. During that meeting, staff discussed site selection, content and design, materials, methods, maintenance, and project installation. Staff suggest this project be completed in phases. Phase 1 includes 3 sites proposed along the Ross Common pedestrian pathway to place historical storyboards focusing on 1, Ross Town Hall and the Bear, 2, Ross School, and 3, the Ross Post Office, which was previously the Ross train station. Staff took into consideration ADA accessibility, underground utilities, tree roots, safety lines for pedestrians, motorists, and cyclists, maintenance of proposed storyboards, existing landscaping, and the implementation of the downtown tree and landscape plan. As the proposed sites are along the Ross Common pedestrian pathway, staff did not find any issues relating to those considerations and will investigate incorporating the storyboards into the downtown tree and landscape plan. RPOA and RHS decision makers left the site selection to the Town of Ross's discretion. Depending on the success of phase 1 of the project, and if the town council chooses to, RPOA would eventually like to extend signage along Lagunitas Road and Shady Lane. Additional phases would be contingent on the evaluation of the pilot project. Staff recommended that RHS provide content for the historical storyboards and that RPOA design each of those storyboards. RPOA would engage their designer to create a tasteful and information-rich faceboard. They also researched Sterling Graphics, a San Francisco-based graphic printing and finishing company, as an option to print the designs on laminate boards. The example that I have on these slides is from the Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy Storywalk program. So that was a basis kind of for what the look would be to make sure that it flowed in with the Ross landscape and that it met our design standards for the town. It was recommended that RPOA source and purchase materials for this project based on best practices from Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy's existing Storywalk program. RPOA committed to purchasing project materials while Ross's Department of Public Works has reviewed and agreed to the installation of the historical storyboards. Per the Conservancy's best practices, graphics were recommended to be designed in-house, and then if used, Sterling Graphics would print those designs on thick laminated panels that would hold up well with a variety of weather patterns. Let's see. The printed panels would be drilled to get a little bit into the nitty-gritty. The printed panels would then be drilled to custom cut 5x5x4 Douglas fir wooden posts, all potentially held together by fixed water-resistant screws and nails that the panels are attached to. It is recommended to source materials from Lowe's, Home Depot, and local hardware stores. And once the materials are sourced and designs are completed, this project is expected to take 2 to 3 days to install and 1 day to partially assemble posts. 1 day to partially assemble posts and 1 to 2 days for the site installation. RPOA is committed to providing ongoing maintenance of this project, which may include repairing those laminated boards, the wooden posts from vandalism and any weather-related degradations that they may find. Project costs. So the costs associated with this pilot project, include purchasing of materials, design, and staff time for installation. Town staff time is estimated to cost between $3,000 and $5,000 for preparation and installation, which has been reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Works. All remaining costs are expected to be funded by RPOA. It should also be noted that the pilot project is not included in the town's fiscal year ending 24 budget, and staff time has been expended to review RPOA's proposal and ready it for town council consideration this evening. If the town council desires to move forward with the pilot Ross History Walk project, the following steps would be taken. Staff would request RPOA and RHS to provide content and design options to be presented to the ADR for feedback. Based on ADR's feedback, staff would then bring this back to council for consideration. Beyond that, RPOA would be asked to source materials, and staff would create a timeline for this project to be installed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Well, thank you very much. It's certainly an interesting project. And there's certainly a lot of history. You kind of missed the most important. You didn't mention the stone wall in front of Ross School where they filmed The Godfather, but maybe that could be included. I'm kidding.
Phase two.
Have you, so it sounds like the storyboards, these signs would be placed on that little pathway that cuts through the common, is that right?
That's correct.
Has there been any consideration for putting historic signs in front of each historic site? So in front of the post office, in front of the Bufano Bear, in front of the school? And I ask that because when we did a Ross Common overview a couple of years ago and talked about what do we want, where do we want it, there was certainly a community-wide sentiment that they wanted to keep the common as it is. So there might be some pushback having signs in the middle of the common where people kind of like to look at the common. So that's one question. Was that considered at all?
I would love to refer that question to Adrian, who's on it, but I can also speak to when I walked the path with Public Works. So we walked the path and we were just not deciding where they would be, but looking at proposed sites. What's the potential? We decided that it could be, they would be off the path, so it wouldn't be disrupting any pathways, and it shouldn't disrupt any look of the pathway. However, I'm not sure what other considerations RPOA has kind of taken, so I would refer the rest of that question, answering of that question, to Adrian.
Yes, so this is Adrian. We didn't think about doing separate sites. We really wanted to envision it as a continuous story walk, but again, using the best practices of the Conservancy. The signs are small in nature and low profile, so they're not intended to obstruct any views. So when you go up to Phoenix Lake, there is a bit of signage as you're kind of going around the lake that's larger in format. We wouldn't do anything like that.
You know, the sample content that was in the staff report, how much content are you thinking of for each sign? For example, the Ross Town Hall and the Bear, you have 2 paragraphs. Was that, you know?
Those are just examples. The next step would be to partner with Richard Torney from RHS to actually select content. But that was more just illustrative purposes to give an idea of types of material that could appear on the signs. I think our goal right now is to get consensus that promoting Ross's rich history is something that the town wants to do. You know, we have so much great history, and we want to celebrate that. We think it's exciting. There's new residents that are in town. There are younger families. There's children. There's people visiting from out of town, and really getting everybody to celebrate that history is what the end goal is. And the next steps will be selecting the exact content by partnering with Historical Society.
Okay. You know, and back to just the use of the common. I mean, people sometimes exercise their dogs there. Is that, you know, does this, I'm not really sure where the dogs run, but don't they sometimes run across that path? Is that kind of interfering with that, or is that not an issue?
Not to my knowledge, as
Okay.
seeing dogs out there, they're usually further in, they're not next to the road.
Uh-huh.
So what we were looking at when we were touring the potential sites was to have the storyboards we placed on the road side of the path. So that I don't imagine that would be a problem.
And then as far as placing, I know that Public Works has kindly said, yes, they can help with that, but when we were doing the plaque for Bald Hill, it was a major project. We hired a landscape contractor to get it right, to get the installation right. It cost a lot of money, it took a lot of time, and would we need to have a landscape contractor, or is that something Public Works could do?
Richard?
Mayor and Council, I think the capacity of my Public Works staff would be not much more than installing the finished plaque and stands into a fence post hole and setting it in concrete. Other than that, we don't have the ability to do any sort of landscape design or that sort of thing. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's just, installing it was a bigger, it was a rock with a plaque.
Right.
So, that wasn't something that, one or two people could do, and they had a whole team and, knew how to put it in so that it would stay forever. I just wasn't sure how much installation the Public Works department does, or if we need to outsource that.
Yeah, it really does depend on the size of these things when they come out, because, our guys aren't really going to be lifting anything more than, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not going to say it, but they can't do anything that's going to cause any strain. And I think the
Yeah.
amount that they can lift is in our personnel and job description. Yeah, so we'll help whatever we can. We're intending, if they're light enough, to set them in the post holes and put them in the right direction and put some concrete in there. But we're not going to do much more than that.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm just wondering if the signs are going to direct people to the actual monument that's being referred to in the sign. Because to me, if you have a sign along the pathway about the bear, people are going to be standing there like, well, where's the bear, right? To me, it makes a little more sense, instead of having them all grouped together along the pathway, to maybe have one at Ross School, one at the post office / train station, one at Town Hall, one in front of the bear.
So again, the content the content that was given was an example, and those are not necessarily the pieces of content that would go on the path. So we have so much rich history. The pilot program is intended to start on Ross Common, and it would not be a big piece on the post office, because to your point, it's not in front of the post office, so that doesn't make as much sense. So we'll have a cohesive pieces of history that work together to tell a story that works for that path.
I guess I need to see more about how it's integrated and how it actually points to the actual structure that's being referenced. And maybe I'm not familiar with Adrian, what you're replicating this on. You're replicating this on something that's in San Francisco, Golden Gate National Parks?
Yes, so San Francisco and the parks, they partner with the public library, and they do a wonderful program doing a story walk. And so they ended up doing different pages of a book, and families and all different ages, as they're walking through nature, they can read pages of the story. So because we have our wonderful Ross book, it's a way to get some of that information out of that book and breathe new life. I know that there's more history about Ross than just the first book. So it's pulling those pieces out. And Richard, feel free to chime in if you're on as well.
Well, I would just comment that the information that is in the book is only a small part of the information that the Ross Historical Society would be able to provide for content on these signs. And so customizing the information on the signs to fit the installation, it seems to me a very reasonable project. And if the sign is not, if there's not a sign right in front of the bear, but the sign indicates where the bear is and the information about the bear, that for a pilot program, that would be a good way to start.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
I just want to comment that I think this is another example of what the RPOA can do for our town. And it's very useful, very commendable. And I'm looking forward to learning some more history of the surroundings in which I live. Thank you very much, RPOA.
Well, I think I have a few continuing questions and concerns where I just want more data. I want to find out. I mean, I'll tell you, as anybody who's ever heard me complain about signs in the town, I'm not a huge sign person. I wish Public Works signs were not all over the town. I don't think they add to the beauty of the town. And the signs that I saw that were in the staff report, the one that, you know, looked really nice, I thought a couple didn't look that nice, but one looked nice. It was the one that was kind of on the right that was really tucked in to the, you know, to the fence, and it didn't really draw attention. But my concern is that if this thing is just sticking up in the common, it's really going to draw your eye there. And what most people feel about the commons is you just look at it, it's very natural. There's not a lot of things that, like, you know, I mean, everybody went up and was really frustrated when we had the goalies hanging out on the commons, or things that, you know, distracted from the natural beauty of the commons. And that's my only concern. That, and also I really think that we should have, I mean, I would hate for RPOA to spend its money and then for people to be criticizing it and criticizing us for agreeing to it. And so I feel like this could do with more scoping. I think Julie's point about, you know, shouldn't some of these signs maybe be closer to there? I think that's a good point. And I just also think, you know, to the extent you're going to talk about the commons, well, what is going to be said? Or is there a way that we could put these, like that one on the right, picture on the right, tucked in somewhere so that it just doesn't stick up and, you know, you're kind of distracted from seeing the commons the way people are used to seeing the commons. So that's my concern. I certainly want to make sure that I love the collaboration between RPOA and the Historical Society. And, you know, for those of you who haven't heard us talk about facilities, we've even talked about, you know, could the Historical Society, which used to exist in Magic, you know, could it have a space in our town, in our facilities in the future where we, you know, I don't know if you would consider it a library or museum or something like that, where we really celebrate it and do some of the same objectives that are, I think, aimed by this project. But I, for one, I'm happy to hear from both of you on Zoom, you know, if you want to weigh in on this, but I am also concerned that we don't really know the subject matter of them. I don't know where on the commons they're going to say. I mean, we spent hours talking about the commons renovation. We literally tortured ourselves on details way more minute than this. And this feels like it's just being presented with not as much data for us, either what these signs are going to say, how many are there. You know, originally there, it sounds like there'll be 3, but maybe someday there could be 20. I mean, I don't know, but these are all really important things that, you know, a lot of times people don't look at our agenda. And so even if we have nobody out here saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, or I don't want to see that, we have to assume that we're the ones that people get to stay home in their bed, and we're the ones kind of weighing in, even if we're maybe naysaying things. So I hope that you don't think I'm, you know, disappointed with your efforts. I'm just not sure that this is right for prime time.
So I think the
Could you just give?
request was,
I'm sorry, could we just hear from Julie first?
Yeah,
Shit.
what I was gonna say was, it looks like from what's being proposed that ADR would review the design. The Historical Society and RPOA would come up with the language. And then it would come back to council for final approval. So there's kind of a few layers to make sure that the signs are aesthetically in keeping with our town and not too verbose, so people can look at them and make it. I think it's important to have them connect to the actual structure, otherwise they're just kind of random. Because maybe I need to go visit those other signs to understand what the deal is. But maybe it would be helpful to come up with a map of the pathway and the approximate, not precise, but approximate locations where RPOA and Ross Rec and the Historical Society would propose the signs would be, so that we could get more of a vision of what they're gonna look like.
I think that's great, Julie. And I think the direction from Krista and Maureen was just to get high level buy-off, because RHS and RPOA are all volunteers. And many of us have full or part-time jobs that we didn't want to get too ahead of ourselves, spending, 100 hours selecting content, spending money working with the designer to design everything. Really, our goal to get out of this was a thumbs up. Yes, we're intrigued by the concept of having a story walk. I'd love to see, and to your point, Julie, going forward and now selecting content that might work with it. Of course, if you feel like there's too much signs already in the common and don't want to proceed with that, that's also something that we'd want to hear at this point before we go ahead forward spinning our wheels. But if we do go forward, I think a map is a great idea of what content will appear at each site, and then doing a mock-up of one or two of the boards so you can get a sense of the look and feel, the amount of content that's on a sign versus the visual, and go from there.
One comment is, to me, it seems that instead of going forward right away with mock-ups, I think the first question is, does the community want a story walk on the path in the common? And maybe yes, but maybe no. And maybe people like the idea of the history, but not necessarily a story walk that's right through the center of the common, just because people have said in the past they like the look of the common. And when we did that outreach and the survey, we got so many responses that said, please leave it alone. So to me, step one is, does the community want a story walk, yes or no? If they do, then we could do a little bit more. And maybe we need a little more data to see what does a story walk look like to see that, but I wouldn't want to sort of forge ahead and have lots of mock-ups when the first question, does the community want a story walk? Because we don't really have a path that goes anywhere. I mean, that's just like a cut through the common. It's not that we have a trail in and out of the woods or some, destination. It's just the path that people cut through. So to me, that's the first question, is this what the community wants?
Yes.
I think maybe we ought to place a little trust in the intelligence of the RPOA and the Ross Historical Society to figure out what the signs should say and where they should be and what they should be like. I think we ought to green light this program now, tonight, with the understanding that they're going to come to some specific plans about where the locations are going to be and what they're going to say and so forth, and bring it back to us.
But do you remember when there was a proposal to have a gazebo in the common? There was a lot of discussion, pro and con, and in the end, the gazebo wasn't placed in the common. I still think it's better to have discussion, pro and con. Is this something the community wants? It's an interesting idea. Is it right for that path? And I'd ask the community about that, and nobody really knows about it because no one really sees our agenda. So I wouldn't. It's an interesting idea. It's a great idea, but nobody knows about it, and I think there should be more input about whether it's the right idea for that pathway.
Well, to bring this to a head, I'm going to make a motion that we,
Oh, yeah, we do need to open it up to, and I think also, this is another one where it just says provide staff direction, so it's not a motion. Yes.
I had a question, just to follow up on what Elizabeth was saying. How would you envision canvassing the community to determine if this is something they would want or not?
I mean, one way is to send out an email to put it in, or to put it in the morning after, and to put it back on the agenda so that people could comment.
I don't think the morning after is quite going to get the same thing. I mean, if we want to do a survey of it, I think that's a possibility, but, you know, we just heard so strongly from people on any change to the commons that I just feel like I'm a little reluctant, and in respect to the time that it might take for them to mock this up, I am a little reluctant to greenlight it and then have them come back and feel like maybe it shouldn't go in that way. Do you have a suggestion?
I do, sort of. Thank you. You know, one thing that the council could do is could ask, because you do have reservations for the Ross Common, and I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I was actually the one that kind of encouraged our Adrian and folks to actually look at the Common, just because it's so much to do a pilot program, because it's so much easier to do it on town-owned property. So I feel the need to kind of jump in there and say that it could have been my bad to have just made that suggestion to begin with. But if the council is interested in the idea of having some type of interpretive signage or something, historical signage on those significant buildings and public art, that you could ask them to explore that idea a little bit further and bring it back to you as a way of kind of starting the idea of having historical signage throughout town at significant pieces. It would be a lot easier if it's on public property. So that's just an option if you have concerns about the Common.
What do you mean if it's on public, I mean, the post office, the Bear, that's all a public property. So why did you focus on the Commons instead? I mean,
Because
this wasn't going to be on private property.
Because the original suggestion, and it was very informal via email, was to have it along, have a pathway along Shady Lane and some other streets through town. And those, it's all very site specific, but there's a lot of places along Shady Lane that could not, it wouldn't be appropriate to put it in the public right of way because of utilities and trees and you know, cars and pedestrians, and that a more appropriate place might be in front of somebody's house. But then we get into these issues of it's private property. So my original thought would be, well, if the council is interested in this, that maybe something like the Common would be, because the town has control over it, would be a good place to start. So I'm just acknowledging that, and kind of, I just want to jump in that was, they took my advice and kind of went down that path. But if that is not something that the council, if the council has concerns about that, and it sounds like you are interested in the signage, potential signage about history and public art and things of significance, that you could ask the RPOA and the Historical Society to explore that idea, that concept, and bring it back. Just an idea.
Is the idea to run tours? And I mean, is that the concept, to actually have the Ross Historical Society lead tours, or just these signs would be open for the public to do self-guided tours?
Look to staff and to Adrian for.
I think it could be two-pronged. So that living on their own, you could walk through and read the signs. But I think that they're, you know, once you have enough of them, that Ross Historical Society could lead richer tours and tell more information. I think that there could be a program tied in with Ross School to getting the students to learn about history. I know currently Ross is sending kids out to San Anselmo, which has its own history museum and it has its own history signs, and kids are doing that currently. We don't seem to have anything up in our town celebrating our history. So that's the hope.
Well, there are 3 bronze plaques. There's one on the post office, more specific to the people who made the donations to build that, but there's one on the Lagunitas Road Bridge, and there's also on the one on the front of, well, I still call it Eddie's Market, and those were installed with the cooperation of the Ross Historical Society. But that's a bronze plaque, and the San Anselmo does have a self-guided walking tour, and they're starting to use the emerging technology of a QR code. You scan it with your phone and your phone comes up and there's all the information, and it doesn't require a group leader. So I think there's a lot of options of ways to provide history to people who are unfamiliar with it without making it a big deal.
Yes.
Right. Well, I like the history part of it, and I like the idea of having signs that are tasteful, like, you know, like the one on the right that Elizabeth was pointing out, that Mayor Breckes was pointing out. And I certainly would support the idea of moving forward with signs that share history of specific sites that are at or near those sites. I'm just not on board with the walk concept because I don't really see our families and children doing that. I mean, maybe you do it once, but you're done, and those signs stay up forever right in the middle of the common, which from our work before to upgrade the common, we just heard so much about, please leave it the way it is. It's natural and beautiful.
And yes, Julie.
I'm still not, I think I need to go on this other tour just to make sure that I'm understanding the concept. But for me, I love the history part of it, and explaining and educating the community with the background of whatever the structures are. To me, it makes more sense to have the sign pretty close to the structure that's being honored. So you have a sign by the bear and you have, you know, a little bit of verbiage. Maybe you have a QR code, and if someone's really a nerd like me, they can do the QR code and get all the background of the bear and how it was saved, and et cetera. And same with the post office and the school, and see how that's received. And I think the walking tour, I don't know if people are thinking, you know, you go down to the Grateful Dead house or, you know, something like that down the road. But as Krista points out, that's potentially going to cause a lot of issues, private property versus in the right of way versus utilities, et cetera. So maybe we just start with the areas on public property that are easily identifiable and have the background connected to whatever item we're trying to honor. Probably overthinking this.
Yes, Town Manager Johnson.
Thank you. Just another idea to throw out is Kittle Park. And so in the recently approved facility master plan for the Civic Center site, the study area included Kittle Park across the street. And the consultant put forward a handful of ideas. There's not a lot of room there at Kittle Park, but it's very completely underutilized. Perhaps there would be an opportunity, if these signage works out, to have some nice landscaping and more of a passive area of contemplation, and to include some historical signage there might be a nice fit and an easy walk for our kids and people that are on the common. Almost like a sculpture park, but a historic site.
Well,
We're starting to get awfully far down in the weeds. But as long as we are, I will tell you that a few years ago, the Ross Historical Society discovered a buried marker in Kittle Park commemorating the fact that there used to be a church at that position. And I think they have kept track of where it is so that we can dig it up again some time if we want it. And it's already there, and it tells the history of Kittle Park. We're really getting into the weeds. I think it's embarrassing that this council is spending so much time about signs and where they should be. Don't we trust anybody else in this town to make decisions that are appropriate?
Well, I'm still regretting like 20 signs in this town, so no, so for me, it's a hard no, but why don't we open up to members of the public and see if anybody wants to speak on this item?
There are no raised hands online.
Okay, well, herein lies the problem, is we don't have enough input, and the only time we have had input on the Commons, it's been, don't change it, don't do anything different to it, leave it alone. So that's in my mind as we go forward. I would be, like you, I would like to see something maybe near the Bear, near the post office. If it's gonna be in the Commons, I'd like to see it tucked into that, you know, against a fence or a hedge or something that doesn't draw attention to itself. That's, you know, it sounds like the process is they're going to, you know, further have a concept around this and then bring it back to ADR and then potentially see back. So I don't know if you heard enough from us to feel like you got some direction, but that's at least my feeling.
I mean, there's certainly, obviously, there are differences of opinion on the council, but it seems like, I mean, for the majority of us, it's that the history sounds wonderful, the signs sound wonderful, but not as part of the path.
Okay, let's move on.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I want to be clear here. So, so the majority, the consensus of the council, are you asking RPOA and the Ross Historical Society to explore the option of doing more signage at additional, not on the common, but at other sites, and to bring something back to the council to continue?
Well, I don't know if this is so inconsistent with what they wanted to do that they don't want to do this. But my feeling is if they want to do some signage, I would prefer to see, you know, 3 signs started, post office, Bear,
Okay.
Common, so we could get an idea of it before we commit to a full program, and that they're near them and that they're not in the Commons.
Okay.
That's what I would like to see. And then I'd like to see a mock-up. I think it would, as I understand, you're saying it would come back to the council, which I think would be appropriate. So if that's something that feels right from their vision,
Okay,
I would be open to that.
good. And I just wanted to check in with Maureen, our rec manager. Do you have the direction then that you need to work with RPOA and the Historic Society?
I do. I feel pretty
Okay,
clear.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
This direction to staff is not unanimous. I think we ought to give no direction to staff presently until somebody comes back with a program that will satisfy these people better than what has been presented.
Okay, moving on to item 15. This is a public hearing on an order to show why the town should not order. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one recused on this item because she's within 500 feet of the property owner. So this is a public hearing on an order to show why the town should not order the repair work regarding a sinkhole at 61 Shady Lane be completed. In conducting such consideration, town council is recommended to consider the staff report, supporting documents in the record, public comments, and any objections or protests from the property owner or other interested party, and upon deliberation, adopt resolution number 2333 to order the repair of the sinkhole at 61 Shady Lane. And I understand we have our city attorney colleague, Eli Fleshman, here to address this matter. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here with the Public Works Director who will be presenting here, but nice to see you all.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Breckus, for that introduction. Council members, Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. As the mayor indicated, we are holding tonight a public hearing on the order to show why the town should not order the repair work regarding the sinkhole at 61 Shady to be commenced and completed. And so the staff report that I prepared presents sort of a chronological order of events from the time that I first went out and observed the sinkhole on January 5th, 2023, and proceeding through back and forth with emails with the property owner up through a point sometime around March where I no longer was able to get any responses from the property owner. And the tone of the emails start out friendly enough at the beginning. With the lack of information of the cause of the sinkhole and what sort of ordinances and laws provided authority to move forward in what fashion. As it became clear that the property owner was basically denying any responsibility for repair or ownership of the issue in his front yard, I proceeded to work with the town manager and the city attorney's office to kind of determine what my authority is to move forward to get a resolution on this. So Chapter 12.20 of the Ross Municipal Code, I'm going to read it here for the record and for the public. It states that any portion of any sidewalk, curb, park, or parking strip in the town that is out of repair or in a dangerous or defective condition, in a condition to endanger persons or property passing thereon, or in a condition to interfere with the public convenience and the use thereof, is declared to be a public nuisance. And the Director of Public Works shall have personal notice of the same. He shall notify the owner, persons in possession of the property fronting on that portion of the sidewalk, curb, park, or parking strip so out of repair, to repair or construct the same. So we began moving forward after around April 28th. I notified the property owner that not having any correspondence with him for a while, that we were going to move forward with the abatement process to get the situation cleared up. It was clear to me within a few days of observing that there's a portion of the sinkhole was actually on private property, and I have a few slides here to demonstrate that, what my observations were. And I went out and made some measurements later to kind of confirm what I found. So direct your attention to the presentation here, where some photographs and findings of the sinkhole. So this was taken the day that I came out, when I was called out to look at the sinkhole. Yeah, we had some rains beforehand. The sinkhole was actually very dry. We could not see any water down in the sinkhole itself. You see here, this is really the only utility that was visible was the owner's irrigation lines that were exposed after the sinkhole fell in and it collapsed. This is kind of a close-up of those irrigation lines, but this is facing from, standing near the large trees and facing back towards the home. And you can see that the sinkhole under the surface extends pretty far back towards the residence. The geotechnical engineer determined it went back about 12 feet subsurface from the edge of the sinkhole. So went out there, made some measurements, actually found some survey markers. As you know, I'm a licensed land surveyor. I was county surveyor for 2 years for the County of Marin. And I was able to kind of use some high school geometry to determine how where the property line runs in relationship to the sinkhole itself. So you can see on this side to the left, that's actually the private property belonging to the owners of 61 Shady. And then this is the public right-of-way indeed, but it is the parking strip area, that area between the property line and the paved road. Now, the paved road, of course, that's the portion of any street in the town of Ross that the town maintains. We receive gas tax funding, all of that RMRA funding, all goes to the maintenance of the pavement in a roadway. There's absolutely no budget line item that says we maintain or repair that area between the pavement and the property line. I have no history of ever being involved in that sort of budget preparation to take care of that sort of situation. My 4 years as the Deputy County of Marin Road Commissioner, I've learned a lot. One of the main things I did learn is this area is not the responsibility of the governing agency unless there's actual ordinance in place that states that. Our own Chapter 12.20 is modeled after the State of California Streets and Highways Code itself, modified to the town's needs. So,
And just to be very clear, that section 12.20010 does make it very clear that the owner is responsible for repairing the sidewalk, that portion of the area right outside the property that the Public Works Director is referencing.
yes. And this is another view of the property standing back facing west down Norwood. And again, I've sketched in the radius curve in front of the property that exists and how it we've since covered up the hole with plywood and tarp, but you can see that it corresponds with this same line when we had the hole exposed. And this is the assessor map and an old survey by George Dodge back from 1909 that shows that this property, 61 Shady, has this radius nose, if you will, between Norwood and Shady Lane. It's shown in the assessor map. I was aware of this very early on. I did try to explain to the property owner that this is the condition, that his property does not end at his front white gate. It actually extends out into an arc. As you see here in the picture, every response I got was, so when is the town going to repair this, because it's on the town's property? And that led to a sort of an impasse where we really had no choice really but to go down this line and just go down this path and get this nuisance abated.
And I just want to add in, just in the notices that were provided by the town, we did inform the property owner that the town had determined that this was a public nuisance as defined by the Ross Municipal Code, Chapter 904 or Section 904-100, which does include that a violation of other ordinances does make this a public nuisance. So this notice has been provided that we've made the determination of a public nuisance.
When was that notice provided?
May 24th.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So are you done with your report?
Yeah, that concludes my report from staff and our.
You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. The property owner has said to me several times in multiple conversations I've had since this hole appeared, he has cited the fact that according to him, and I don't know whether this is true, that there have been instances where the town stepped in and repaired beyond what it was required to by the law. Now, assuming that's true, does that in any way undermine our right to require him to repair it now?
Respectfully, Councilmember Cool, no, it does not. The town has every ability to enforce its ordinances.
And let me explain the incidents that I believe the property owner is referring to. Is just up the street on Norwood. We had a condition in December, totally unrelated to the storm, but and they're very noticeable along Shady, Norwood, and several streets within Ross. We started having a depression on the just outside of the pavement, sometimes on people's driveway. In fact, there was one on Elizabeth Robbins' driveway that she noticed. But the ones that what we started noticing on one of the holes, I think it was near 11 Norwood, was that there was an actual opening in the pavement pointed into the roadway where it would appear that our roadway is being undermined. So we hired a pavement contractor to come and excavate that out and find out what's going on. And it is around these depressions that were formed when trees were removed many, many years ago, and now the organics have rotted away, and that's undermined the pavement above. So yeah, we excavated a portion of the parking strip and a portion of the roadway in order to get an idea of what was happening. It did turn out that there was several roots, large roots that were extending under the roadway, that were rotting out, and as a proactive measure, we excavated more into the roadway to remove these rotting roots. And then we suspected, and rightfully so, that the other locations, there was 2 other locations on Norwood, was most likely the same thing. They were obvious that they were the old locations of trees that the organics were deteriorating. So we did the same thing where the roots of those trees were undermining the roadway underneath Norwood. So yes, there was some excavation in the park strip where the old deteriorated tree stumps were, but we also excavated into the roadway to remove these rotting roots.
And just to bring that to the point that those instances are separate. They're a different issue than what is before that we're bringing before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question?
Yeah, it sounds like Rich and you both have spent a lot of time on this since January. And I'm looking at the resolution. It's in the 5th paragraph. It says the notice to repair further informed the property owner that all costs of any abatement ordered would be a special assessment against the property and constitute a lien if the town were required to make repairs. And I'm wondering if the legal costs and the staff costs that you all have incurred since January 5th or maybe since the notice or whatever date, is that something that the town is allowed to recover in this type of an action?
Towns are, the cost of abatement are typically things that a town can seek to impose a lien on or seek recovery through those types of special assessments or seek recovery on. So yes, the cost of abatement would include the investigation and the efforts to understand what's going on at the place.
So basically all of Rich's time on this matter starting in January plus legal time would be part of the recovery or the lien?
It may be, that would be, as also it's included in this is we would be coming back to the council to present whatever cost that.
An itemized,
yeah,
okay.
to show you exactly
Okay.
what we'd be seeking.
Okay. I would, if that is something that we can do, that's something that I would want to do.
I would also, let me just explain my role tonight so the record's clear. Eli Fleshman's been helping staff in a prosecutorial role for this nuisance abatement, and I'm advising the council on any findings you would make. One of the suggestions we're going to make when you get ready for a resolution is to also include the option of bringing a civil action to abate the nuisance. And in our code, it's section 9.04.165. If we seek attorney's fees in that action, we can receive them in the civil action. It's reciprocal. If we lose the action, the other side gets them.
So that was one of my questions, was it seems like what we're saying is there could be an assessment against the property, but alternatively, if there is litigation that the town goes forward with in the alternative, we we could seek costs and fees, correct? Okay, and sorry, go ahead.
And if we don't bring a legal action to recover the costs, we would not recover them until the time that there is some sale of the property or something. Is that right?
If you're talking about if we were able to put a lien or a special assessment on the property, that's typically how it is done. They can be paid out in a lot of different ways, but in most instances is when the transfer of property takes place.
So if we want to get the money now, we don't want to take that route.
That would probably be a later recovery of money if you took that route. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
But a lawsuit would contemplate a lot of time, whereas if we went ahead and abated this now, we would get the hole filled, right? And make it safer.
Okay, but did you
Yeah, I
want
was
to
just
speak?
going to add to that, I mean, the resolution we're presenting to you tonight would have two options, and we wouldn't be we'd be empowered to bring either a lawsuit or get the hole filled immediately and go after the cost later. And I think what we would depend on of what path we would take would be depending on the public interest of whether we think there's a danger to the public and whether we can, hold off and wait for it to get our costs through the court system. But if the public works director determines that our road is at risk, we might need to front those costs and do the process ourselves and then go after them.
Is it just the road at risk, or is it the risk that someone's walking along there and the tarp isn't there, or the wood isn't there, and they fall in and really hurt themselves?
I would leave that to Rich to answer. It's my understanding that area is not really a pedestrian.
But think about Halloween. I mean, that's a big concern right there, is we have 1 million children on that street and they're everywhere. And I think we really need to, if we can get it fixed before Halloween, I think that would be ideal. If it isn't, I think we have to put something over it. Like, I don't know if it's gonna be a, giant dumpster or what, but we have to make sure that's safe because children are everywhere on Halloween on Shady Lane.
And we know it's there. So we've got some potential exposure unless we fix it now.
Right, and so my action was based on safety. The geotechnical investigation states in the report that the pavement of and the subbase of Norwood and Shady are not in danger. That I'm perfectly fine with that. It's that assessment. It's more of safety, and when the rains come, if it starts propagating, and then the town assets are actually compromised. That's my main concern.
Yeah, if I had my preference, it would be get it done before Halloween. And if not, take whatever measures we need to make it safe. We should probably open it up for the public. And is there, in this process, are we supposed to have the applicant speak separately? Is that an option?
Yeah, what I would recommend
Not
is
the
you open up
applicant.
you open up for public comment, see if there's any public comment, and then you allow the property owner to address the council for, I would say, the same amount of time we would do as an applicant for 15 minutes.
Okay. Why don't we open it up for public comment? Would anyone like to be heard? Is anyone on Zoom?
Property owners on Zoom.
Okay, so if there's no one else, we'll close it to the public and we'll allow the applicant to speak for 15 minutes. And you don't need to take the 15 minutes if you don't want to, but we'll give you that amount of time should you wish to be heard for that long.
Jonathan Pickett?
No.
Yes, Jonathan Pickett, attorney for the property owners. Litigation has already been initiated in this instance. In fact, a
Sorry,
lawsuit is.
we can't hear you very well.
Well,
I think we need to, I'm gonna set my timer, but also, and maybe you wanna set yours at home, unless there's one on the screen, but also, could we just make sure you speak as loudly as possible so we can hear you?
Yes, so Jonathan Pickett, attorney for the property owners. A lawsuit's already been filed. In fact, a lawsuit for $750,000 was filed against the town seeking damages and attorney fees for inverse accommodation. The issue at bar here is the sinkhole is actually much bigger than the town realizes. It actually extends 12 feet towards Shady Lane in one direction, another 5 feet towards Norwood in the other direction, and only about 3 to 4 feet towards the property owner's property. In fact, if you look across the street on the corner of Norwood and Shady, where 51 Shady Lane is located, you can see a depression presenting over there as well. Sinkholes do not just appear out of nowhere. They're actually caused by something. And while the sinkhole may be on somebody's property, the root cause has never been determined where that dirt went and what caused it. That's thousands of tons of dirt that went somewhere. And the question is where? So if you just fill it or repair it, what's going to prevent it from reoccurring? Nothing. The root cause has to be determined first before you can appropriate liability to anyone. Essentially, the issue is for this section of the municipal code, essentially the defect is in a public sidewalk, and the city can require the abutting property owner to repair the defect in the sidewalk. But only the public property can be repaired under this ordinance. Essentially, the first issue is the town did not follow the requirements of the ordinance, which requires not only the mailing of notice, but actually posting of notice of the property. That is essentially fundamental to jurisdiction and the moving forward on the presentation and the notice to repair, and failure to comply with that requirement is essentially fatal. Second of all, the resolution and the staff report refers to requiring the property owner to make repairs, or if the property owner doesn't, the city to repair and regrade the private and public property to the same grade as it was before the sinkhole developed, and allowing the city to enter the property of the private property owner to make the repairs. First and foremost, this section of the municipal code does not allow basically the city to use this method to obtain repair costs from a property owner for repair on private property. And second of all, is not allowed, the city cannot basically allow the city's employees to go onto private property to make repairs based on this ordinance. In fact, that requires a judicial order, not simply a council resolution.
It requires a judicial what?
A judicial order, actually court order to enter the property for an inspection or to make repairs, not simply council action. Finally, I believe Mr. Cool is also conflicted out because of his involvement in the matter since the beginning. Essentially, his statements to the public and other members of the town about the cause, and essentially his participation is unfair and a violation of the property owner's rights. And thus, I would request that he be excluded from voting and making this decision.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. And so can you, I don't know who I should ask, Ben or you, Eli Fleshman, who's going to tell us what the amendment is or the wording of the amendment? Because it sounds like we're amending the resolution.
I'd be happy to do that as suggested language. I would suggest if the council is so inclined to add a number 3 to after the now therefore, and it would say, in addition or in the alternative pursuant to Ross Municipal Code 9.04.140, the town attorney may bring a civil action in the name of the people of the state to abate this public nuisance. And
I'm not sure what the active words were. Will bring or shall bring?
may bring.
May bring.
Yes.
And so, for example, that would allow us to respond to the lawsuit with our own, should we so desire.
Yes, exactly.
Request to abate this so that we address the sinkhole.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I think, Councilmember McMillan, you said it started with in the alternative. Actually, it started with in addition or in the alternative.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that we send the letter as amended by Mr. Schlesman's suggestion.
Adopt.
Adopt
And-
a resolution.
Yeah, there's no letter, so it would be our resolution.
Yes.
Okay,
Second.
so this is a motion to adopt the resolution as amended.
Yes.
And roll call?
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 3, the motion passes.
Okay, moving on, we'll go to item number 16.
Get Elizabeth Robbins back first.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Krista, are you getting her? I am. Thank you.
I need to recuse myself because I'm a member of the Lagunitas Club, so I will do so at this time.
Okay. So we have another recusal as a member, and then we have Councilmember Robbins coming back, and this is item 16, Town Council consideration of the request for approval of an amendment to the use permit by resolution for the Lagunitas Country Club to allow a 4th platform paddle tennis court and include the Lagunitas Country Club's representation that the club's facilities will be solely for the use of its members and members' invited guests, both now and in the future, and the facilities will not be available to the public under any circumstances. And according to this representation, the club is not subject to accessibility requirements. Yes, David, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Mayor Breckus and council members. David Woltering, Interim Planning and Building Director. The request before you relates to an application that was submitted by the Lagunitas Country Club to add a 4th platform court, paddle court, to its property at 205 Lagunitas Road. The proposal for this new court, 4th paddle court, would be adjacent to an existing 3rd paddle court in a hilly area on the property. The application did go to ADR on March 21st, 2023 of this year. During that consideration by ADR, the issue of accessibility was raised, and staff indicated that staff would continue to work with the applicant and explore this issue in terms of ADA accessibility for this 4th paddle court. Subsequently, staff worked with the applicant, also town staff, in terms of the senior building inspector and CSG, our plan checking firm, in terms of accessibility issues. A number of options were looked at. The staff looked at the site itself on the hillside next to paddle court 3. Also, the staff, the applicant, and our consultant CSG looked at what we refer to as an equivalent accommodation on a lower court, paddle court 2, to see if that court could be made to accommodate those with disabilities. As the staff worked with representatives from the Lagunitas Country Club, those representatives also were exploring other options, including private club status. Their legal advisors indicated to them that as a private club meeting certain standards, they would not need to comply with ADA accessibility requirements. As they looked at the options, the 4th paddle court location on the hillside, looking at an equivalent accommodation at paddle court 2, and this option of private club status and not needing to conform as advised by their legal representatives with accessibility requirements, they decided to pursue the private club status. So essentially what's before you tonight, and the focus really is an amendment to the conditional use permit for the Lagunitas Country Club. And the idea is to, in this amendment, to allow consideration of a fourth court, but it also adds language as suggested by representatives from the Lagunitas Country Club to support what we understand is that they modified their standards, club standards, to align with a private club in terms of definition. So I'm going to read to you from the language in the amendment what is before you. Again, in this amendment, it indicates the allowance for a fourth court, but going on, it states, the Lagunitas Country Club has provided information to the town that the club is exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, because it is a private club and has no public accommodation. The town is relying on the this representation, and as such, the Lagunitas Country Club's facilities will solely be for the use of its members and members' invited guests, both now and in the future, and the facilities will not be available to the public under any circumstances. Since the Lagunitas Country Club has provided information that there is no public accommodation and they claim it is not subject to the accessibility requirements, the town is not imposing any such requirements. This additional language, the last sentence, the town has spoken to the representatives and actually suggested this last sentence. Should a public accommodation be deemed to exist, the Lagunitas Country Club must meet all applicable requirements legally mandated under the ADA. So that's the language before you. And I just want to clarify that tonight you're looking at the use permit and the amendment, not specifically the fourth court project. And to just clarify your focus for an action tonight or consideration, the issue before the council in the use permit amendment is whether the council finds acceptable the fourth paddle court on the property that is not considered ADA compliant, given the club's representation that it is a private club. The general design aspects of the fourth paddle court are not before you at this time. If you approve the use permit amendment, staff will work with the applicant to continue the process, the paddle court application that was considered and supported by the ADR, as I had mentioned, that does not include accessibility improvements. On the other hand, if you deny the use permit amendment, the applicant will need to decide whether to modify the application to satisfy accessibility requirements, including possibly an option for equivalent accommodation, which I described earlier, by proposing accessibility improvements on a lower court, or withdraw the application. Should the applicant decide to modify the applications, staff would work with the applicant to process that modified application. So that's really what's before you tonight. That's the focus of what's before you tonight. We, staff, have prepared a resolution for your consideration for possible action. And the applicant's representatives are here to provide comments and respond to any of your questions. I thank you. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions? Yes.
If the Lagunitas Club is a totally private club and not required to follow ADA, guidelines, would that mean that, for example, the clubhouse doesn't need to be accessible because nothing at the club is required to be ADA accessible. Is that right?
That's their representation. That's their representation.
And then I have a question, really more for Ben. I mean, I think the club has been, I mean, it's always been a private club, but there have been public events. I mean, there are weddings, though I guess those are invited guests, but sometimes there've been council meetings here, there, and MCCMC meetings. So it almost sounds like this is like a change in the status of the club because they'd like to have an extra court, but is that legal? I mean, it seems like a funny, an odd sort of step to take.
Yeah, I think what I was clear with staff and which the staff has relayed to the applicant, it is not up to the town to make a determination whether they are a public accommodation or not. That's up to them, and we have to take the representation. Private clubs can be not a public accommodation, but the point you raise about city council meetings occurring there, if they are a private club, we are not going to have city council meetings there anymore, because city council meetings have to be ADA accessible. So again, they are coming forward with an application to make it, and they say their business operation, they don't provide a public accommodation, and we're relying on that representation if we're going to amend the CUP permit for that.
But if they say they're not, if they say they are private, it's not for us to decide, is that correct?
Well, there are some, without going too in-depth on their business model, I mean, let's say a 24-hour fitness says they are a private club. They are open, anyone can get a membership. So that's not necessarily, that's still a public accommodation, a 24-hour fitness or some, club. So there's a distinction between a private club and a truly private club. It's my understanding they feel that they are a truly private club. And that's, if the town moves forward with this amendment, we are relying on that representation.
So can I follow up on that? I know from a building I was remodeling in San Anselmo that San Anselmo required me to paper the file with a CASP, certificate saying that, things met things. And they wanted that because if they approved something, they could get sued. So even if it wasn't just my violation, the city itself could get sued. And so they wanted to have someone who's an expert say that. I'm just wondering, it seems like what makes me nervous about the language is this, we're relying on. And I'm wondering if we have, vetted the analysis, because if we haven't, and we even have this carve out, if it's ever deemed to exist, then you have to comply. But I'm just wondering, have we sufficiently vetted it, or should we do something more to vet that analysis so that the town is protected?
Right. So I did talk to our ADA attorney in our firm, and based on their representations of what their model's like, she has stated that it could be deemed a private accommodation. But again, it's not a finding we're going to make, and if they're wrong and they get sued, and for ADA or the town gets sued, they have to indemnify us under the conditions of approval.
And then, do we understand what change in use this actually would bring? I mean, obviously, we've had these it hasn't been council meetings, they're MCCMC events, but they're Brown Act covered, and they're public events. Okay. Okay. So that use might change. I'm just wondering, and maybe this is a question we should ask the applicant, as to what other uses we are changing by this change.
Mayor, I think that is a question for the applicant. They've indicated that they've also adjusted, modified their standards. So that would be a question for the applicant.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that? And then after the applicant speaks, we can open it up for public comment.
Hello? Oh, yeah, okay. Good evening, Mayor Breckus and council. Thank you very much for your time. David, thank you very much for your concise explanation of what's before. I wanted to introduce Nick Hoppy, our president, and Tom Mays, who is our paddle court expert. As David told you, we have two main goals here. One is to memorialize the private club status in our use permit, and the other is to open up the conversation about adding the fourth paddle court. We, as you know, have been through this process now starting in April of 22 of last year. We did receive the ADR approval earlier this year, and we were informed at that point we thought we were going to come in front of the board with a project. We were informed at that point that we needed a use permit modification in order to do that. So we've been working on getting that in play since then. And you see what our goals are. We are trying to respond within the club. We're not ignoring the importance of responding to an aging demographic that we have in our membership, and that, basically that we have in our membership. And so we have a number of ideas and projects that are not fully formed at this point to approach in a voluntary accessibility upgrade, alternatively to being required to do it as part of a building permit. So I would be happy to reserve the balance of my time to respond to questions.
Thank you. Can you just tell me your name? I'm sorry if I missed it.
I'm Oliver Dibble. I'm the chairman of the House and Grounds Committee for the Lagunitas Club.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions?
Okay.
So I guess we have a letter from an attorney, and that's papering our file, and our city attorney is consulted. If you don't have anything to say, maybe I should open up to members of the public, of which we might have none.
Only that we have worked with David, we've worked with the town attorney to craft language that's appropriate for the use permit. And we've taken their amendments completely and included them. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Okay. Yes. Maybe, is this for the applicant?
Yeah.
Would you mind, I'm sorry to have you sit down,
sorry.
but would you mind going up? Julie has a question
just
for
have
you. Would you mind going back up to the podium so we could ask a question of you?
It seems like if you're amending the use permit and eliminating any public function, the use of the club is going to go down. Is that correct?
I don't know what will happen. I think that the public accommodations that were deemed to exist were so minor that I don't think that they would really have any effect on the use of the club. I mean, you talked about holding a council meeting there. I've been a member of the club for 50 years, and I'm not sure I remember that ever happening. It may have happened, but it was a real, it was a blip in what we do.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So is there any other use that will, I mean, we're all sad the MCCMC events can't be held there, but are there any other uses that you anticipate changing as a result?
We have already modified all of our language, all of our internal language to reflect what is in the private club, idea there. I think there's seven tests, and we've gone through all the tests with not with David, but with his predecessor, Rebecca, and also your CASP consultant. And we outlined all of those things and why we felt that we were conforming to all of those.
And I guess I'm just wondering, one change of use is you can never have an MCCMC event, which I'm more sad about that than you are. But the other, I'm just wondering, separate from that, are there other changes to the use of the club that are occurring? Meaning we can't have a cash bar, or we're not going to have, I have no idea. I'm just asking.
We don't have one anyway. So.
Okay, but That was just an example.
Yeah, no.
Are there changes that you have had to make or that you are making to fit within this category, just that you can tell us
The
about?
only change that we've made is to clarify our guest policy so that if somebody wants to have a guest, they have to be there and they have to, they have to be part of, part of what they're doing. They have to be there for something specific. They don't just get to say, oh, I want this person to be a guest, come on down.
Okay,
Yeah, so you're right, that, and that has, that has already been implemented.
okay, and separate from that, there's no other changes?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you.
One last question.
Yes.
It's for Ben. So if the Lagunitas Club says they're a private club, we have to accept that. Is that right? We're not deciding whether or not they are private. Is that correct?
We are not, we are not making a determination of whether they're a private club, but we are not going to require them to go through the ADA process as they move forward with their use permit. It's based on their representation with our due diligence, but it's, like I said, if it was a gym, the laws, again, I mean, it's too loose to allow people to enter, as the gentleman just noted. They've already taken action to make it much more stringent for people to enter the property.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have any further questions.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your interest in this.
Thanks. Okay, why don't we open up for members of the public and see if there is anybody?
There are no raised hands online.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. So it besides the MCCMC and the council meeting, I mean, it's sort of feels like they've been a private club this whole time. So I'm not feeling, as long as we are protected and our due diligence is done, it doesn't feel like a inappropriate change. Is that how others feel?
I agree with that.
Okay. So given that, is there a motion?
So what is the motion would be to amend the use permit?
To adopt a resolution that was submitted on Tuesday with the adopted conditions of approval amending the use permit.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
Okay, with a vote of 3, the motion passes.
The next item is item 17, and we are going to continue that to a future council meeting at the request of the applicant. So moving on, we'll go on to item 18, which is 10 Shady Lane, design review and variances.
Wait for beach.
Oh,
Well, that's right. That's a brief.
we don't think I can call the title of it while he comes. All right. Okay, so 10 Shady Lane, design review and variances in town council consideration of resolution 2330. And Alex, do you want to give the report?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Breckus and council members. Tonight, the applicant at 10 Shady Lane is requesting approval of design review and variances. The applicant has modified plans to reflect the correct information by removing the 2 bay windows as well as the side yard shed as part of the FAR. The correct floor area for the project is 3,241 square feet instead of the 3,278 square feet. a difference of 37 square feet, and will no longer be lowering the ceiling heights of floor closets as originally stated on the staff report. The project is also proposing to demolish existing storage sheds in the rear yard totaling 130 square feet and transferring them to the main house. The project includes expanding the entry, enlarging the kitchen area. A variance is required to exceed the allowable lot coverage by 22 square feet and to allow the expansion of the kitchen area to encroach into the side yard setback. Staff believes that a variance is appropriate to expand the kitchen since the structure is being enlarged under section 18.52.030. Nonconforming structures and uses, paragraph 8 states that a nonconforming structure may be altered so long as the exterior dimensions of the structure are not enlarged by the alteration and all other regulations are complied with. Staff received also emails in support of the project from the neighbors at 20 Shady Lane and 1 Ames. And staff recommends that the town council approves resolution number 2330, approving design review and variances for 10 Shady Lane. Thank you.
Am I correct that we've had some amendments to this project? Since the staff report was published?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, why don't I read here, but does anybody have any questions?
Maybe you could just go over those changes again quickly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do I have the applicant, or do you want me to? Oh. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor Breckus, Town Council. Is this on?
Put it closer.
Okay. We made a few changes. We essentially realized we'd made a mistake in calculating the floor area. There's a small shed on the north side of the building that when we went back and measured, the ceiling height is just under 6 feet tall. So we shouldn't have counted that as floor area. And there's 2 bays in the front that don't go to the floor. And again, those shouldn't have counted as floor area. So we added up the 2 bays and this little defunct shed. It turns out we're actually a little bit fewer square feet with the remodel than existing. So we're not asking for an FAR variance. And I think those are the changes that we're talking about. Okay.
So I had asked and raised whether the way it was analyzed, it was as needing a variance because the kitchen projects into the side yard. But wouldn't that be a nonconformity permit? Because we have normally analyzed when someone has expanded a nonconformity. We haven't required them to get a variance for that. We've said they just need a nonconformity permit, which is a little less legally burdensome. So I don't know if you guys saw my email. I sent it awfully late today, and I'm sorry about that, but sometimes I start thinking about these projects and then I come up with other ideas about them.
Mayor Breckus, we did see your comment and we did research it. And we found that actually the variance would be applicable. And I think that Alex can go over the language more specifically. I think he has a copy of the code.
Yes, Mayor Breckus. So according to chapter 18.52, nonconforming structures.
I'm sorry, I want to get there because I just want to understand this, because when I tell you we've done this a lot of times, so I'm sorry, 18 what?
18.52.
Okay. And what section?
18.52.030.
020?
030.
Okay, got it.
So on paragraph A and B.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so since the kitchen is expanding, I mean, it's adding I guess, flock coverage or building coverage, which meaning it's new areas, so that I believe would be a variance, because according to here, it's saying that any exterior dimensions of structure should not be enlarged.
I know, but take a look at C. This is a confusing section, and when we had my first one dealing with this, went round and round. I kind of thought this thing could be amended to be a little more clear, because I think you're right. You go right to A and B and you say can't expand it. But if you look at C, it says it may be enlarged, reconstructed, or altered, except for a floor area ratio variance shall not be required. So that, I'm just saying, I mean, Julie, you were nodding, you agree. This is how we've done these ones. We have said it's a non-conforming structure, it's in the setback, or it doesn't comply in some way. And we've said the non-conformity permit kicks in and can be used to expand it. And then we have not required a variance.
If it doesn't increase floor FAR.
As long as it doesn't increase FAR.
I think that's right.
Not increase, it can increase FAR, it can't go over, it can't be a floor area variance.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm just telling, I know it's been a while since we've had one of these, but that is the analysis and interpretation. In fact, this is almost a good reason why we've talked about having an administrative book, like I've said Belvedere does, where that you can go to that section and then there's a cheat sheet and you say, oh yeah, you can do this, here's the interpretation. It would help us a lot, especially since we, hopefully know more, but we've had staff turnover. So it's kind of hard to play catch up. But at any rate,
So you're saying this doesn't need a variance, this is just a non-conforming?
well, as long as I'm not going over on floor area.
Yes. But yeah,
I agree.
but the application they still need a variance for the building coverage exceeding 22 square feet.
That they need a variance
Yes.
for, right?
Correct.
Um,
Through the mayor, if I could, you're right about the language being inconsistent. I'll say inconsistent because you look at A, 18.52.030, it says a non-conforming structure may be altered so long as the exterior dimensions of the structure are not enlarged by the alteration and all other regulations are complied with. So it does seem like there's some internal conflict in this section. Yeah.
Sounds like everyone's in agreement that it's poorly drafted. What I think my reading and given the past practices is that you can't enlarge it unless you have under C, a non-conforming permit, which begs the question, why do we have A if we're gonna allow C? And I think that's the confusion.
Right.
But Ben, do you agree that in this case, it's okay to have a non-conformity permit and not a variance?
Yes, I mean, especially given the past practices and the language there, I think it is a non-conforming permit. And there's no need for variance for that portion of the project, but as staff has stated, there's other portions.
Yeah, I mean, because even those under F, all those mandatory findings, they necessarily assume that we're going to make, findings that, it substantially complies with design review, even though, so anyway, that's just what I was thinking. And I'm not sure if this was the one that I had another comment on. Yes. I did have another comment, which is the findings for the resolution talk about the project will accommodate an expanded family. And I think we should strike that. We don't normally grant variances to families versus childless people. And so even if the applicant variance findings come in that way, we should, strike it out on our own language.
Okay, I've changed that.
Okay. Okay. So does anybody have, I don't know if technically that was the applicant having an opportunity to speak, but does anybody have questions of staff? Okay, so then does the applicant want to speak on this item? And Cindy, I can't see from here, are you putting on the timer so that people know? Okay, and then does it come up over here so people can see?
No, but they see the green, amber, and red dots in the front.
Where do they see that?
It's on the front here.
So that it tells them,
When it gets to amber, it's a shorter period of time. They've got 3 minutes to start. Amber's like a minute, red is like 10
okay.
seconds.
Technically, you have a lot more time than that, but I know you're not going to take it.
I don't think I need much
We
time.
we just moved the timer, so I'm not sure how it's working today. That was my question. Go
Well,
ahead.
Mostly, I agreed with Alex's information. We are taking off sheds at the back of the garage, so we're ending up with more pervious surfaces. We're not increasing floor area. And it just seems that such a de minimis tweak to the house really improves the livability of the house with hurting no one, having no negative impact whatsoever. So I hope you see it our way, that this is something good, that's approvable. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
I was really happy you went out and measured again and got that result, because I was thinking maybe the bay windows or that shed took you over, and it was.
The lowering the closet ceilings, that we heard about that at ADR, maybe, but it's a little suspect, yeah.
Yeah.
But, little suspect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions anymore for the applicant? Okay, why don't we open up for the public? Let's see if the public has anything to say. Is there anyone there? No? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council.
I move we approve Resolution 2330.
Second.
Yes.
Oh.
We probably need to eliminate the variance.
If I may, the motion maker, if they'd be willing to revise it to include that we are going to be issuing a nonconformity permit and making the findings contained in 1852-040 F 1 through 9 as a revised resolution that'll be prepared for the mayor's signature, and delete the findings relating to the variance for that, for the kitchen addition.
Yes, I would be happy to change the motion to
And
include
I'll
that.
accept it.
If I could, through the mayor, I would just add applicable findings.
Correct.
In that section. And with that, I think that would work.
Okay. We have a motion for the applicable findings in a second, and we can take the vote.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 4, the motion passes.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to number 19, 39 Allen Avenue Design Review and Nonconformity Permit and Hillside Lot Permit and a variance.
I must recuse myself, but I live, because I live too close.
You're practically a part-timer tonight.
I'm getting a lot of exercise.
Okay, So the report, so we have a staff report on this one?
Yes, Mayor. Should I start or should I wait to?
You can go ahead.
Okay. The applicant at 39 Allen Avenue is requesting approval for design review, a hillside lot permit, nonconformity permit, and a variance. The project is proposing interior and exterior renovations to modernize the two-story home. The project proposes to also update the front facade by removing the front entrance and stairs and relocating them to the lower level and adding a porch. The balcony is also proposed above the new porch. The project also includes adding a total of 70 square feet of new floor area, 67 square feet on the upper level, on the lower level, and 3 square feet on the upper level. A variance is required to exceed the allowable floor area by 70 square feet. The project also requires a nonconformity permit to alter the existing nonconforming deck with regards to the side yard setback. The project also proposes new landscape and hardscape throughout the property. Staff would like to note that the color of the house came up during the ADR hearing, and some of the ADR members suggested a more natural color for the project. And the design guidelines have not changed, and the project should incorporate more of a natural color. Staff recommends that the Town Council approves resolution number 2331, approving design review, a hillside lot permit, a nonconformity permit, and a variance for the property located at 39 Allen Avenue. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, did you say that the color changed?
No, I just stated that the design guidelines state that the project should use, projects should use more natural colors, neutral or natural colors.
Because the staff report at page 4 says that, however, the applicant wishes to stay with the proposed white exterior color of the home based on follow-up conversations with staff. But I thought I heard gray when I was out there, right? So that, maybe that was a change.
I'm not aware of the change of
Page
color.
4 of the staff report. I'm seeing nodding from the applicants in the back, so I feel good about that, but I just wanted to point that out.
So through the mayor, if we could, I think that's a question for the applicant.
Okay.
Because our understanding was, while at ADR, the issue of the exterior color was brought up, and some members encouraged a more natural color, in at least initial staff discussions with the applicant, is my understanding, that the applicant wanted to stay with the color that was presented at ADR and not modify to a more natural color. It could be that subsequently they've changed their mind on that.
Okay.
And I think that the assistant planner was trying to point out that that was raised. There was some concern, but it moved forward. And it was at least our initial understanding that the applicants were going to maintain the color at ADR, but let's find out if that's a change.
Sounds good. All right, so why don't we, does anybody have questions of staff?
Is the house white right now? Oh, it's not white, it's gray? I see. Okay, so basically, the color will stay essentially the same. You're not repainting the whole house. Yeah,
Well,
fine.
So why don't we have the applicants or their professional come on up and talk about this item?
Good evening again. Alex, can you put the 3D rendering? I would hope you'd agree that this design is an improvement on the existing house. I want to go through a few things that we're proposing. We're reducing the impervious surfaces. We're proposing to reduce the size of the side deck. I think the staff report was unclear whether it said enlarge, but actually we're reducing it from 438 square feet to 368. The proposed FAR, what we're proposing, is 18.8%, below the 20% neighborhood guidelines, but above the FAR allowed for a hillside lot. But as staff points out in the report, hillside lot ordinances were written to preserve significant, I'm quoting, preserve significant features of the natural environment, including watershed, canyon, knolls, ridge lines, and to minimize the disturbance to the natural terrain. But this house has been there for 50 years, and the disturbance, if there was one, we're not causing more disturbance. So we feel this is, even though it's technically in the hillside guidelines, it doesn't really fit the intention of the hillside guidelines. And as noted, if FAR guidelines are written to regulate mass and bulk, then in this case, removing a 150 square foot obtrusive, somewhat unsafe exterior wood stair that doesn't count as FAR and replace it with a safe, less bulky looking interior stair that does count as FAR, that's where the added square footage comes in. So it seems like a reasonable trade-off. The number goes up, but the mass goes down. And ADR did recommend us looking into a different color, and actually the Barshides would like to use a warm gray color instead of the white, and we're happy to do that, make that a condition of approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
So why don't we open up to members of the public and see if anybody wishes to be heard?
There are no members of the public online.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't usually think that a variance for increasing FAR is unusual. However, this doesn't really feel like increasing FAR in that, as you pointed out, there's real square footage being removed in the entrance, and what the house is getting isn't so much extra space. They're making some space to put that stairway inside, so there's not an extra room. There's not anything special, like a special privilege where they're getting more space with a variance. It really is a trade, as you say. And if you had the two side by side, I mean, it's like a wonderful makeover, the before and after. So I think it'll be lovely, and I think it's totally appropriate to have that modest increase in FAR to bring the stairway inside.
And I agree, and I think the new stairway will be much safer than the existing, so that's great.
I was curious why the deck it was kind of suggested the deck is a non-conforming side yard structure. Is that because it's raised? Why is it a non-conforming?
It's due to the side yard setback, Mayor Berkus.
Okay, but we can have decks in the side yard. It's just like raised decks, right? I'm just curious because I couldn't really see the topography where the deck was, because it's like kind of, so I'm not suggesting you do anything different. I just was curious about that.
If I could respond to that. If it's a raised deck, and I believe over 30 inches, but we could confirm that, then it would be considered a structure, and encroachment into a side setback area would require a variance. So height does matter.
Yeah.
There's a provision that addresses that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's important that we do describe this project and the distinguishing characteristics because of the fact that it is a floor area variance. And I was thinking about this as well. And I feel like it is already a disturbed area. It doesn't add to the bulk or mass. It's a very, I just can't really imagine how you could fix this entrance without doing what you've done, unless you're going to take away square footage from the home, which seems really, unreasonable. And I agree, it looks like it's going to be a really pretty facade and improvement. So I too can support the project. So with that, does anybody want to make the motion?
If I could, through the mayor, the matter of the color, there was a suggestion for a condition, adding a condition. So perhaps in terms of a motion, the idea would be if the warm gray is a color that you would support, to indicate a warm gray, and perhaps to have the applicant submit that for the review and approval of the planning and building director, so that there's an opportunity to review that color and make sure it's in conformance with what was described tonight. Thank you.
We could even just say gray, so it's not, doesn't sound like we've bound them too much.
Yeah.
It's the existing color they're keeping, isn't that right? Is that correct, or are you changing the color?
Some change of
I see. So
shade.
gray. We would say gray.
So I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2331 with the condition that the color be gray.
Okay. Second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 3, the motion passes.
All right. I mean, I kind of thought it might be a late one, but I didn't know how late. Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. All righty.
I apologize for taking so much time coming and going.
All right, well, we're happy you're here. So we're moving on to item number 20, which is council correspondence. Okay, and the next would be item B, future council items. Okay, seeing none, we'll conclude tonight's meeting.